Patrick never expected an ordinary day to turn into one of the most surreal experiences of his life. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like, and share this video. It all began with a car, if you could still call it that. It was nothing more than a rust-covered shell of a vehicle, buried under tarps and boxes in the back of his garage. For years it had sat there untouched, just another forgotten relic from his days as a hobby mechanic. Now in his late 60s and preparing to downsize, Patrick was clearing out his garage and decided it was finally time to part with the car. He didn't think much of it, just another thing to get rid of. His wife, Ella, suggested they list it online. "Make it free," she said. "Someone might want it for scrap. At least we won't have to pay to have it hauled off." It seemed like a reasonable idea. Patrick snapped a few pictures, wrote a simple description, and posted the listing on a forum for car enthusiasts. He didn't expect much. Maybe someone would come by in a few days, drag it away, and that would be the end of it. But within minutes, his phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again. And again. Within 15 minutes, Patrick's inbox was flooded with messages, more than he'd ever received from anything he'd listed before. His curiosity piqued. He opened the messages on his computer, expecting one or two people interested in a free haul. Instead, he was met with a bidding war. People were offering money. Not just small amounts, hundreds of dollars at first, then thousands. Within an hour, the offers had soared past $20,000. Patrick was stunned. This was a vehicle he had once used to scavenge parts from. There was barely anything left of it, no engine, no functional wiring, no wheels worth salvaging. It was as if people weren't bidding for the car, but for something he didn't yet understand. His hands trembled as he called Ella over to show her what was happening. The offers continued to roll in, each one outbidding the last. By the time the price reached $30,000, Patrick stopped thinking about scrapping the car. He was overwhelmed, not by greed, but by confusion. What was it about this car that was attracting so much attention? Determined to find out, he began responding to a few of the private messages he'd received. Most people were evasive, unwilling to explain why they were offering such outrageous amounts. A few even hinted that the information would cost him. It was maddening. He couldn't enjoy the prospect of a windfall when he didn't understand its cause. Then one message stood out. A user claimed to know the full story and offered to tell Patrick everything, but only in person. He was local, he said, and would be happy to stop by in a couple of hours. Patrick agreed, intrigued but cautious. Something about the whole situation felt off, like he was standing on the edge of a revelation he hadn't prepared for. In the meantime, he went to the garage to inspect the car himself. He walked around the decaying shell, examining every inch. The rust was deep. The upholstery, if you could call it that, was shredded. The dashboard was cracked and the odometer was stuck. There were no badges or markings that stood out, nothing that screamed collector's item. And yet, the online forum was going wild. When Patrick refreshed the page, the current bid was climbing toward $100,000. The man arrived on time. He was unassuming mid-30s, soft-spoken, and clearly more excited about the meeting than Patrick was. Without wasting time, he walked up to the car and pointed to the license plate. "That's why," he said. "This car, it used to belong to Dean Mercer." Patrick blinked. The name rang a bell. Dean Mercer, the elusive racing legend who had died in a tragic crash 2 decades earlier. His fan base had grown exponentially since then, his legacy immortalized in documentaries and books. And this rusted, forgotten Carthus was the very one he had driven during his early career. Not the one from his championship days, but one of his first. It was the car he had modified himself, posted about in forums, and photographed with fans. The number plate was instantly recognizable to anyone in the racing community. And now it was sitting in Patrick's garage. The man explained that Mercer's fans had been searching for this car for years. It had disappeared after a private auction, and its whereabouts had remained unknown until Patrick unknowingly posted photos online. "It's more than a car," the man added. "It's history." Patrick felt a chill run through him. The quiet, rusting piece of metal he had taken for granted all these years suddenly transformed into a relic of cultural significance. He now understood the frenzy, and he was no longer surprised when, just an hour later, the highest bid reached $250,000. Patrick stood in silence, absorbing what he had just heard. The garage, once a place of casual tinkering and routine repairs, now felt like the setting of a historic revelation. He couldn't believe that a car he had once thought of as useless scrap was actually a treasure to so many people. The rusted hulk before him, which he'd nearly dragged to the scrapyard, was now a legend in its own right. The man explained more as they stood by the car. Dean Mercer wasn't just a famous driver, he was an icon, especially in underground racing circles in the early tuner scene. This particular car had appeared in a grainy magazine spread decades ago, parked in front of Mercer's first garage. Enthusiasts had been trying to track it down for years, but no one had known where it ended up. Until now. Patrick remembered buying the car years ago from a small estate sale, thinking it might be useful for spare parts. He hadn't even bothered checking its ownership history. The documentation had been sparse, just a dusty title with barely legible ink. At the time, it didn't matter. It was just another body for his garage. But now, everything had changed. The discovery had awakened a swarm of collectors, superfans, and possibly even museums, all eager to own a piece of history. That night, Patrick barely slept. The forum thread had grown to hundreds of pages. Articles were being written. A few automotive YouTubers were already speculating on the car's authenticity, dissecting old photos and comparing them with the pictures from his post. The number plate, minor dents, custom cuts in the paneling, they all matched. The evidence was building, and the offers kept rising. Some users even claimed they were representing private collectors. Patrick's phone rang the next morning. A journalist from a popular car magazine wanted to interview him. Then came a call from a European motorsports museum offering to fly a curator over to inspect the car. Patrick felt like he was losing control. This had all started because he wanted to clear out space. Now, he was at the center of something much bigger than himself. Ella sat beside him as he reviewed the latest bids. They had surpassed $250,000. And yet, the more money was offered, the less Patrick felt like selling. It wasn't just about profit anymore. It was about understanding. He wanted to know everything. Who had owned it before Mercer? How did it disappear? Why did no one recognize it sooner? The car, once silent, now echoed with questions. A few days later, a professional appraiser arrived. Patrick had invited him at the advice of the local Collectors Guild, who warned him about scammers and undervaluation. The appraiser spent hours examining the car. He confirmed not only the authenticity of the number plate, but also found rare fabrication methods used only by Mercer during his early builds, things invisible to an untrained eye. He concluded that the car could easily fetch up to $400,000 in the right auction. Patrick was stunned. He had come so close to giving it away for free. His hands trembled slightly as he ran them over the corroded hood. How strange it was to think that all these years he had been sitting on something priceless without knowing it. Despite the jaw-dropping appraisal, Patrick still hesitated. He declined to take the highest bid immediately. Instead, he organized a public exhibition in his garage just for a weekend. He invited fans, historians, and a few of Mercer's former teammates. Word spread fast, and soon people were traveling from other states just to see the car in person. Some of them cried. Others shared stories about how Mercer had inspired them to pursue careers in racing or engineering. The garage transformed into a shrine for a weekend. One of Mercer's old friends showed up unannounced. He was elderly, walking with a cane, but his eyes lit up when he saw the vehicle. "That's her," he whispered. "We built this one together." He stood next to the car in silence for several minutes, placing one hand on the roof. He told Patrick stories no article or forum had captured about late nights in greasy overalls, racing down back roads, and dreams of someday building something bigger than themselves. Patrick listened with awe. It was as if the car was telling its own story through the people it had touched. The more he heard, the more he realized. This wasn't just about value, it was about legacy. A part of racing history had resurfaced in the unlikeliest of places, and it had chosen Patrick to tell its story. After the exhibition, Patrick declined all private offers. He contacted a museum instead, one known for preserving automotive artifacts and telling the stories behind them. They didn't offer him the most money, but they promised to restore the car, honor Mercer's legacy, and keep it on permanent display. Patrick agreed. The day the car was picked up, Patrick felt a strange mixture of sorrow and relief. As the truck rolled away, he wasn't thinking about the money he could have made. He was thinking about how close he'd come to destroying something that meant so much to so many, and how grateful he was that he didn't. Months later, Patrick received an invitation to the unveiling ceremony at the museum. The car had been restored partially, preserving the scars and rust to reflect its journey. Patrick stood in front of the glass display, surrounded by photos, blueprints, and a video loop of Mercer's early career. He smiled. The car wasn't lost anymore. It was home. And all of it had started because one man decided to clean his garage.